Yeah, this is, yes, not the John Kennedy I'm speaking to. I brought my own friend. When you were leaving the house and I saw this John Kennedy, I had to bring him with me. This is a wind-up, he rocks. He's in a rocking chair. He actually can rock back and forth.
You're listening to X-Posure on Radio X. I'm John Kennedy, and that is Jack White with Taking Me Back. It's the opening track on the brand new album, Fear of the Dawn, which has just come out. And I'm very pleased to say that Jack White is connected to me online. Hello, Jack. How are you?
I'm great. How are you, John?
I'm fine. It's so good to see you and so good to have new music from you, a whole album to enjoy. And we're playing the whole thing tonight, and you're going to help us through it track by track. Taking Me Back is such an amazing way to start. I mean, it's full on. So much is going on. Tell us, how did this come about?
It's wild because it's interesting that these two albums, you know, the Fear of the Dawn album and the Entering Heaven Alive album, they start and end with the same song. You know, a very hard, very digital, computer-heavy electric version, and then a very analog and mellow, jazzy 1930s Django Reinhardt sort of version of the same song. Those are the bookends of the two albums. So it was one of my favorite parts of working on this project, or these projects, because it kind of showed that it didn't really matter how you present a song, you know, it's about the song, and you can present a song in 15 different ways or 500 different ways, it doesn't matter, you know, if it's heavy metal or if it's jazz or if it's blues, doesn't matter. So I thought that was kind of a nice thing for people to sort of experience.
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, there are two albums this year. The second one comes out in July, Entering Heaven Alive.
Yes.
And so, you recorded all the songs at the same time as like an ongoing piece of work, is that right?
Yeah, they were all recorded at the same time, and I was worried if I kept the second album, you know, and waited to, you know, release it after this one was done or touring this one. I thought, you know, maybe by the time I get around back to it, I won't be that as excited about it because it won't be brand new to me. It won't be, you know, right now I'm really on fire about all those songs, so I'm very excited and inspired to play them live, and so I thought it'd be better to just put them both out right now. And I'm glad that I pushed for that to happen. I originally pushed for both albums to come out on the same day, but the vinyl production of those two albums was impossible to have them all released and have the correct amount pressed up, you know, to have them both on the same day. Logistical nightmare. And as I've been preaching, you know, everywhere I go now for the major labels to make their own pressing plants again, this is long delays, you know, 8 to 10 month delays at pressing plants, including our own. So it goes to show you, even when you own your own pressing plant, it's very difficult to get what you need to happen.
Yeah, tricky business. So on Fear of the Dawn, with that version of Taking Me Back, I mean, it's interesting because, I mean, you mentioned metal, there's a metal element to it, but there's also almost an electronic kind of Justice, soul wax, prodigy element that I'm hearing in there too, which is really exciting. And of course, you mesh them together. And it sounds like you're really exploring sound with this record. I mean, you always do. You're always exploring sound, but it sounds like you were having a lot of fun exploring these sounds.
I really was pushing really hard on myself. I had done a lot on the last album I released, Boarding House Reach. It was really, that record was really about the sounds that were popping into my head. I really wanted to make them happen onto the recording, where normally in the past with analog tape you couldn't really do it all the time. You know, with digital recording, which that first Taking Me Back is all digital, so it's the ability to sort of like, I could pop any idea that I had in there that was in my mind, whereas sort of like an analog recording, you can't always do that just because of the number of tracks. So I explored that a lot on the last record, and even more so here. You know, it's nice. I wish I could go back in time and teach my younger self how to get these certain tones now. It's nice after a long recording so many years, you know, you learn certain microphones and certain compressors, and I always wish I could go back and teach my younger self how to get these certain sounds I was hoping to get when I was 21 or whatever. Right.
So you could re-record those songs that you were doing then in the way with the knowledge that you have now. But I guess,
no regrets. But it would have been nice to have that knowledge and experience. But
that's really interesting. And so who's playing on Take Me Back? Because I'm under the impression that some of the songs, it's just all you. It is. I mean, it's a Jack White solo album, but it is all you at times.
Taking Me Back was working with probably the most difficult musician I've ever worked with, me. And Nah, joke and say that tongue in cheek, but it really, all the instruments are myself on that song. So that was really, I had done the musical part of the James Bond track years ago that I had done with Alicia Keys. I did all the music myself, but this time I had recorded everything, all the vocals and the writing and the instrumentation. So I never really kind of wanted to do that too much. I like being in a room with other people, you know. But so that was kind of difficult to play along with yourself. Drums, you know, and I was putting drums last, which is so strange to overdub drums after you've played the guitar or something like that. So it was tricky, but I liked the challenge.
Yeah, interesting. And the drum sound on that track is really interesting as well, because it's quite echoey, quite hollow in a way, but it still sounds big.
Yeah, you know, this ability to push these gigantic kick drums now and these really sharp snare drums that you can do with, I mean, earlier like Pro Tools recording maybe 20 years ago didn't sound very good to me at all, but now they've worked out a lot of kinks, and it's you know, you can get these interesting sounds. I like to do both too, go to tape and to Pro Tools, but do all the editing in the computer, because it's really can get, you know, it saves a lot of time with like the old razor blade the way I used to do it.
Yeah, that's a tough thing to do. I remember editing tape, doing interviews on to 1/4-inch tape and editing it afterwards with a razor blade. And
that's tough. Those are the most difficult things I've ever edited. Is the spoken word records we've done with Third Man. They're called the Green Series at Third Man Records, and they're people I've interviewed, and trying to get an hour-long conversation down to 5 minutes or less on a 45. Man, that's so difficult. So my heart goes out to that struggle of you doing that on 1/4-inch tape. That must have been really hard.
Yeah, I really hated the blade in the metal, you know, to try and slice it, because it felt like, you know, nails down a blackboard or something.
Oh God, yeah, it's terrible.
Fear of the Dawn is the second song on the album, and this is another big number. I mean, this is definitely the loud album, isn't it, of the two?
Yeah, it certainly is. Yeah, once you get to if you can get through those first 3 songs, they're very heavy, and it's great because it's sort of like a left punch, and I was excited about putting that together. And I think by the time those third song is in it sort of made me realize there was no putting these delicate, somber numbers on the same record as that. They're just too heavy, and that's when I think the beginning of them turning into 2 different projects started to happen.
Yeah. But it's great because it gives a real momentum and a real excitement to the opening few tracks on the record. You know, there's a real momentum to it all. And what can you tell us about Fear of the Dawn? I mean, there's some amazing fuzzy sounds in there.
It was meant to, all of the different riffs and sections of the track before, the Taking Me Back, those were all meant to be different songs. But I shortened them. They just became small sections of Taking Me Back. But every time you hear a chord change or a rhythm change, that was supposed to be a different song. So those were all squished together, maybe like 5 or 6 different songs put together into Taking Me Back. And then the last one became its own song, Fear of the Dawn. That was another section. So that's why they go right together on the sequence. They go right into one another.
Yeah, and Fear of the Dawn seems to be the theme of this album. You know, there's something about the nighttime and the coming of the light that you're digging into across a few of the tracks. You know, can you expand on that?
It's wild. I asked a lot of different illustrators if they could do artwork for my album without seeing each other's artwork, so they would each come up with something on their own without being influenced by the other people. And I thought, whatever they're going to send, I think we're going to put together in there, you know, as long as it was something interesting, that we would put it in the artwork of the album. And I gave them just a bunch of words as possible inspiration for them. And there were words like, midnight, dawn, dusk, fear, things like that. And it turned out to be, oh wow, I guess that's what this album is really revolving around, these notions. And I kind of thought, man, I bet you some people are going to think this is a concept record. And I started to think about it in that way too. I thought, okay, well, if they do, that's fine with me. You know, it doesn't bother me, however people take it. But so there's definitely those themes happening.
Yeah, it's interesting. Well, we're going to have another blast of excitement now. This is Fear of the Dawn. It's Jack White on X-Posure Radio X. It is Jack White on X-Posure Radio X with The White Raven, the third song on his new album, Fear of the Dawn, which has just come out. And tonight, I, John Kennedy, am talking to Jack White, who's giving us the lowdown track by track. And this is the third of those big, noisy numbers that starts the record. And this seems to take us in another direction, though. There are elements of something like suicide, maybe, on this track, or maybe even some of the insistent riffs that Joy Division kind of entertained on some of their earlier songs, I think.
I could see that. Yeah, this track was written on synthesizer. So whenever I've written on keyboards or a synthesizer like that, yeah, it's a totally different vibe. It's nice. It's a totally different zone to be in, and you hold notes longer than you would normally on a guitar or piano. I do, I mean, and or I have different expressions the way you're pressing down these keys and the way you mess with these oscillators, and so you're doing something totally different. It makes you, when that happens, it makes you wish, makes me wish I could play trumpet or clarinet or other kind of instruments and write on those instruments just to see what melody would come out and what different chord changes you would do just based on the tone coming out of that instrument. Again, it's sort of like showing that the Taking Me Back, the hard version and the delicate version doesn't really matter, like how you do it. It's about the song. So yeah, I guess in a way it's interesting, and it's going to be nice to play this song live, The White Raven. So synth heavy and so bass heavy.
Yeah, that would be exciting. Well, all of these songs sound like they're going to be amazing live. I think really exciting.
Thank you.
And on The White Raven, you say, "My motives are invisible."
Yes,
but my honor is invisible as well. What are you getting at?
Armor. Yes.
Oh, your armor. Right. I read it as honor.
Yes. It sounds like honor. You're right. So I thought people might think that too. So I no problem there. But but maybe honor might have been better. Yeah, I was kind of riffing off of camouflage and how how the United Nations they have armored vehicles that are painted white. Maybe in a sense of some sort of sense of neutrality or something like that. But I always thought it was interesting. It's almost like wars. The most tragic things that happen on Earth between humans, and we paint ourselves up in these strange colors. It's so interesting. You wouldn't have soldiers going out in pink neon suits or something, but maybe in another dimension you would.
Yeah.
So maybe this that's not to speak lightly of war, but it's just the strangeness of how we are all. It's almost like people are playing soldier. People who are in massive positions of power are still playing soldier. It's strange. I guess that's some of the things I was riffing on there.
Yeah. And so then The White Raven is followed by Heidi Ho, which goes in a completely different direction now. I mean, we've thought it's all been pretty crazy so far, and then you give us Heidi Ho, which just sounds fantastic, and it's almost as if you've got this kind of misleading sound for about 30-40 seconds, this experimentation, and then the beat comes in, and then somebody's singing in Spanish, is it?
It's a sample of Cab Calloway. He's sort of scatting, so it's sort of like meaningless words. And it does sound like it's a foreign language of some kind. And it's the funniest thing is all my friends and musicians and friends think that this is me at the beginning of the song singing. And they said, no, it's Cab Calloway. And that's actually what the basis of Q-Tip's lyrics were based off of the idea of this song by Cab Calloway called The Heidi Ho Man. And it was just a song I heard on the radio, and it's been sampled by other people. But I had heard it on the radio in the kitchen the day I was working in the studio. I thought, it'd be so great to sample that and play along with it and play drums along with it. And that was just kind of my intention at first. And when I did that, and then I sent it to Q-Tip, and I thought maybe he might get some inspiration. And he sent something back in 5 minutes later. So he was very inspired quickly.
Yeah, that's amazing. And you go back away with Q-Tip, I think. You've known him for quite some time.
Yeah, we worked together on the last Tribe Called Quest record. He asked me to play on some tracks there, and that was really great. And we'd hung out at his studio in New York many times, and it was we built up a bit of a bond. And he's just a great music lover. He's like a music historian, and he goes deep with music, and his knowledge is vast.
And so, do you think there's ever a chance that you'd perform this together?
I hope so. We performed together once on stage in New York, and that would be great to be able to do this song live. I'd love to.
Does it mean that you won't be able to do it live because Q-Tip won't be around, or are you going to be?
We are still rehearsing it. We're still rehearsing it, and I don't know. I think I was asking, what do pop singers do? So many pop songs have a rap break or a rap verse in the middle of a pop song. I don't know what those singers do live or when they play on television, but maybe they just sample it or they just skip that section. I don't know, but we're rehearsing the music anyway. We're definitely going to be playing the music no matter what, But
you're not tempted to do a version?
Well, I can sing my part later in the song, but I wouldn't dare try to do Q-Tip's part. No.
It sounds fantastic, the whole combination, and well, I hope there are more collaborations for the future between you and Q-Tip. That would be brilliant.
Oh, thank you. We have many other tracks hanging around, so that might happen.
Excellent, that's good news. But we're going to listen to the current one now. This is Jack White with little help from Q-Tip. It's Heidi Ho on X-Posure Radio X. It is Jack White on X-Posure Radio X, and another selection from Fear of the Dawn. I'm John Kennedy, and connected to me online is Jack, and that is Eosiphobia. Is that how you say it, Jack?
I think so. I didn't Google the pronunciation, but I think you did it right. Yeah.
Right. Well, I did Google the meaning. I went to the dictionary, and Eosiphobia means morbid fear of dawn or daylight. So that ties in with the fear of the dawn potential concept for this record. And this is an amazing track, and it's reprised a few songs on. So this takes you into dub territory, possibly.
Yeah, it's got that vibe, doesn't it? It's got sort of a reggae rhythm to it, and at other times it's very punk guitar, and I really loved it. It really showcased the musicianship of the musicians I'm lucky enough to play with, and that was really, a lot of that was live in the room, us playing, and we played for quite some time on that riff, those different riffs, and I edited together different takes and these good parts, and there were so many extra parts that I had to reprise later in the album, because we just had some extra things that were so. Oh God, I can't keep that, to myself. I want to put that out just to show the drumming and the keyboard playing, the bass playing from those guys.
Yeah. So where were you recording this, and who with?
In my studio at home. I recorded all of these songs. It's called Third Man Recording Studio, and I was, I'd say, lucky enough and smart enough years ago to have built that at my house, not knowing that one day there will be a pandemic for a couple of years, where it would come in really handy to have that there when you are writing songs and people aren't really getting in studios together to record. So it came in quite handy during the pandemic to have that right there while we were all locked down.
So it's just in your backyard. You can just step out the door and there it is.
Yes.
And so who else is playing on Eosiphobia?
There's Daru Jones on drums, who I think is the most unique drummer in the world today. And there's Dominic Davis on bass, and we've been playing together since we were 13 or something. And then Quincy McCrary on keys, and he's going to be on tour with us this year, and he's just incredible.
And in terms of this whole sun going down thing, with the words and the way that they evolved with the songs, did they kind of come afterwards, or were you saying them as you were enjoying the music that you were creating, or how did you approach it?
I had written down, I'd read in an article that word Eosiphobia, and I'd written it down and thought I should play with that on something somewhere down the road. So I was looking through some notes and I saw that word and I thought, what does that mean again? I had to look it back up and I thought, oh yeah, fear of the dawn. I mean, such a dangerous. I guess, I don't know, it just seemed to me like maybe one of the worst things you could ever have, or the worst fears you could have, because it's inevitable. Like, the dawn is going to come and there's nothing you can do about it. I mean, and it just made me kind of keep meditating on it. So that was one of the first things that I was messing around with these songs, as far as metaphors and something that could mean more to other people, maybe. And it was nice because the jumping off point, I think, led to a lot of other songs feeding off of other ideas that originally sprung for that. So by looking backwards when I was mixing the record, I thought that's probably a good name for the album then, Fear of the Dawn.
Yeah. And then we go from Eosiphobia into the Twilight. This is an extraordinary track as well. And conjuring up different sounds that I haven't heard you make before in a way. This kind of whole funkiness, this whole kind of Prince feel to this song and the vocal style. It's fantastic.
Thank you. And it's wild. There's definitely territory I've never been in before. I'm sampling Manhattan Transfer and Bobby McFerrin and John Hendricks and sampling William S. Burroughs in there, and a lot of editing and strange. I worked on that song for quite some time. And it's interesting the different modes, these different sections things that would come out. There's not much happening lyrically with that song. I didn't really want it to be a lyrical based song. I wanted it to be like a foundation we could play off of live and do something interesting things with. Yes, and already in rehearsal, it's proving to be really interesting. And, as part of its memory and math, and the other part is totally free jazz or something. So it's great.
Yeah. And when you're choosing those samples, are they triggered by a memory or happen chance? Or how do you go about it?
That one was, I remembered hearing this Twilight Zone song of Manhattan Transfer when I was a kid, and I was messing around with these ideas of Twilight and Moonlight and Dusk and all of that. So I thought, I got to go back and listen to that song. And I remember that. It was like maybe my sister had the album when I was a kid. So it was great to listen to that again. And how talented, Manhattan Transfer's vocals are. They're just these incredible 4-part harmonies that they've done, and it's just wild what they could do vocally with no instrumentation. So that was nice to feed off of that.
Yeah. I mean, it's extraordinary sound that they create, and then those William S. Burroughs samples. You mentioned some of the spoken word series on Third Man. It is spoken word something that you listen to a lot, or are you looking for things all the time, thinking, well, one day I might be able to use that in something?
I did so much editing on that song, Into the Twilight, that it made me think of this album I had when I was a teenager by William S. Burroughs called Breakthrough in Grey Room. And it was, he had talked about cutting up tape and editing and advancing poetry and advancing the spoken word with new techniques. And I thought it would be nice to pay him a little respect, because that's when I first heard about it, editing in that style. And so I found that phrase he says, when you cut into the present, the future leaks out. And that seemed to really make sense with this track.
Yeah, that's great. So almost like an homage to the person who helped create the cut-up technique.
Yeah.
Fantastic. We're going to listen to it now. Into the Twilight, Jack White on X-Posure, Radio X. It is dusk on X-Posure, Radio X. That is the 7th track on the new album by Jack White. Fear of the Dawn is what it's called. It's just come out. And tonight I'm talking to Jack about the record. We're going through it track by track. Dusk is really a kind of interlude in a way. It's just 30 seconds long, just a quiet moment for us to take stock of everything we've heard so far, those previous 6 amazing tunes. Then we launch back in to the rest of the record. So, and in terms of that interlude, of those 30 seconds, how and why did you go for that?
I thought it was a good time to have a little intermission, sort of a side B is starting to take a breath, because the next track that's coming up, What's the Trick, is overload, kind of getting pummeled. It's such a heavy riff, and I thought it would. I wanted also to the album to have some melodic remembrances, So when the Dusk, that melody that's in Dusk, comes up later in a song called Morning, Noon, and Night near the end of the album. So it's nice to have something that reminds you. And, these are techniques used, obviously big scores and things, overtures and of giant orchestrations. So it was nice to have a little bit of that in there to sort of find a thread.
Yeah, and to allow us a chance to take our breath, or to take a breath before we go into What's the Trick. So, this is beautifully fuzzy and distorted. What's it all made on? What are these instruments you've used?
The main fuzz is a Bumblebuzz pedal. Third Man Records actually sells, it's called the Bumblebuzz effect pedal. And it's really just incredible sounding. It has this octave nature to it, and that was what I was feeding off at first. But then I got into a lot of tape editing, and I played all the instruments myself on this track, so it led itself to having more and more edits and more creativity, like, you know, behind the desk, but trying to play along with myself on several different instruments. These were all just sort of little challenges I was giving myself, you know, to try to push myself into a new territory. So it felt good. I love this track a lot. One nice thing was my guitar tech, Dan Mancini, had come by on his chopper motorcycle, and it was parked outside the studio, and we just put a microphone outside and asked him to start it up, you know. And that's how the song starts, with you know, his motorcycle starting, but we hit it with a sampler, so it's dun 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 dun. So you're hearing it start up as the start of the song.
Right. So it almost starts a rhythm track for you.
Yeah, it kind of does. With timing, it felt really on point with the song.
Yeah. And are you having fun with these lyrics, with the rhymes, and, you know, what's the trick in making my love stick? You know, I mean, really, when it comes to words, often you're just enjoying the sound of them in the same way that you're enjoying the sounds that you create.
Yeah, you're sort of like, we sort of live in a soundbite world, right? So it's can you make somebody interested in you know, 70 characters or less or something? So that kind of was the idea with some of those lines in this song, you know, of making a point with very few words. And, you know, it's nice to put yourself in a place. I remember Beck was telling me once about his album Midnight Vultures, which is my favorite Beck album. Well, actually, Mutations might be my favorite. Well, maybe it's a tie between Mutations and Midnight Vultures. But on Midnight Vultures, he told me that he was you know, wanted to write, you know, wanted to say what he hoped he would hear in modern R&B and hip hop. You know, what kind of things he would want to hear, some bizarre metaphors. You know, so he was looking at it from his own angle of that. You know, putting yourself in the place of some other singer or some other musician is a good place to be sometimes, because you might imitate what that would happen. Or if I was the guitar player in that band, what would I do? You know, that's can sometimes be a good jumping off point for things like that when you're creating.
Yeah. So in a way, that is the trick. To keep yourself changing and
maybe so, yeah.
Excellent. This is it. Jack White, What's the Trick? On X-Posure Radio X. It is Jack White on X-Posure Radio X. I'm John Kennedy, and tonight Jack is my guest. He's talking us through Fear of the Dawn, his brand new album, which has just come out, and you've just heard That Was Then, This Is Now, track 9, and that keeps changing tempo all the time. And you mentioned earlier on that some of these songs were meant to be other songs, and you kept, you know, is this another instance? I mean, this sounds like so many different things going on.
Yeah, it's wild. It has I liked it a lot because it felt like Detroit garage rock roots to the riff, and it sounded like something that could be the Henchmen or the Go or Rocket 455. It had these bands that I came up with the White Stripes, and so that just had that vibe to it. Yeah, Daru did these cool slowing the beat down just a little bit and then speeding it back up again. Those were his ideas too, so that was great to feed off of that.
Yeah, it sounds great. So in a way, you know, it's quite good because you've got this arsenal of sound at your fingertips, you know, and this long history of music making, both for your own projects but lots of other people's projects. So you've got all this stuff to draw from, and occasionally it's quite good to go back to the essence, the roots of where it all started for you.
It's nice once in a while to touch base. Yeah, you get a new inspiration. You pop back into your younger self, but you have to stay away from sort of nostalgia and recreating a place you've already been. I mean, that's not really healthy. It could be kind of death for an artist. It's almost like you arrived, or you've run out of ideas, or you're starting to look backwards instead of forwards. And so, you know, you could touch base with that kind of thing, but it's best to keep pushing forward.
Do you think that has some connection to the title? That was then, This Is Now, in a way.
Maybe you're right. Maybe that's where I started thinking about those words. I don't know. Good point. And now I'm going to be thinking about that all night long. Great. Now I'm not going to sleep tonight, John. Great. Thanks.
And then after That Was Then, This Is Now, Eosiphobia Reprise. Or maybe you say reprise. I don't know.
We would say reprise, like in, what was it, in Sgt. Pepper, we would say reprise, and I remember hearing it on British documentaries about the Beatles calling it reprise, and I thought, oh, wow, I guess that's how you're supposed to say it. But the Beatles would have said reprise. But either way, it was a callback to the track, because there was just a lot of extra playing there. I mean, there really was 10 more minutes of incredible playing from these guys, you know. Quincy McCrary and Daru and Dominic. So I really wanted to show a little bit more of that because it wasn't. The original song would have been 8 to 10 minutes long or something. So I'm glad I put that in there. It's one of my favorite moments to listen to on the record.
Yeah, it sounds great. And so it all recorded at the same time, these two sections of Eosiphobia. Was it just one long whole take, and then you just went in afterwards and started editing around?
Several takes, and so much good. It's one of those things where like, there's nothing. There's like 20 seconds of goodness in there, and the rest is all kind of not interesting. It was one where there's just way too much interesting going down all these takes. So I had to maybe I can get one solid song and then a little bit extra. So I'm glad I did that. You
weren't tempted to do a whole side of Eosiphobia? Miles Davis.
Could happen. That might come out one day, maybe. Yeah.
It's almost prog dub. This section, in a way. It's
we did a thing where the entire band we all pressed an echo pedal each in our own instrument at the same time. So we were instantaneously doubled. Every note we played had a second note chasing it. Instead of da 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 da, it was da 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 da. So we were all of a sudden in a new mode. It was such a strange thing to do while playing live with a band. Everybody hit the echo pedal at the same time. I've never done that before, and it really launched us. It was inspiring to everybody.
Yeah, fantastic. Such a spirit of adventure to this. It is Jack White, Eosiphobia Reprise on X-Posure Radio X. It is Jack White on X-Posure Radio X with Morning, Noon and Night. It's the penultimate song on Fear of the Dawn, the 11th track on the new album, which has just come out. Jack White is my guest tonight. I'm John Kennedy. And Morning, Noon and Night is another ball game again. Each track, some of the ingredients may be the same, but each one is cooked up a different way,
Yeah.
And you've got an interesting guest on this, Dwayne Dennison of the Jesus Lizard.
Yeah. That was just a happenstance thing. My daughter was hanging out with his daughter. They're friends, and I went to drop her off, and this guy had a mask on because the pandemic, and he said Dwayne, and when I was driving home with my daughter, I said, "Hey, what's that guy's last name?" She said Dennison. I said, "Is that Dwayne Dennison from Jesus Lizard?" And she said, "Yeah, he's in a band. That's right, that is him." Yeah, she didn't even realize it. We became fast friends. He's also a guitar player from Michigan, just like I am, and we became good friends quickly. Obviously, it was a lot of common ground, and so we were working on that song. I asked him if he wanted to come over and play guitar, because that was going to be a little bit more in the directorial mode, because it was the first time we had musicians kind of back in the studio, a group of us. So it was early days for that. So I didn't really want to bog down with just being a guitar player. I had to also sort of direct and produce it. So I thought it would be nice to have some insurance there with a great guitar player like him. And he luckily said yes and took the day off work and came over. So that was great. And he played the guitar solo on this song too, that's the first time someone else played the guitar solo on one of my songs. And I was so glad of that. It was nice to have this totally different take. I would have never played a solo like that. It's so much better than what I would have done. So I'm really glad he decided to take the day off work. That's pretty cool.
Well, how could he resist the invitation? But that is great. I mean, I love that. When they were such an incendiary, wild band, with such a great reputation about them, particularly about the performance and the attitude. So to kind of just harness a tiny bit of that for yourself is pretty cool.
Yeah, it was an honor. So I'm so glad he did it.
And also, something that to relinquish control, to give that guitar solo to somebody else, it was maybe a nice feeling, a chance to kind of, step away, but also have the overview while it's being done.
Yeah, I mean, I think you learn sometimes over the years that certain things matter and certain things don't matter, and certain things matter in a different way if somebody else is attacking it. Maybe you could write the song and you don't play on it at all, and you have other people play it, and you'll get something totally different. If I might sit down and write at the piano, and maybe it's not a case of finding somebody better at the piano to play it. Maybe it's just finding somebody different, or maybe less complicated or something like that. You can get to some pretty cool places if you insert other people, other musicians, if you're lucky enough to have those people around you, and so these times are interesting. When you get people in a room, that's when my brain gets really excited with whatever chemicals that fire off in our brain, the neurons or endorphins or whatever they are, adrenaline. I start to feed off of the idea, what if this happened? What if this banjo player played mandolin instead? Or what if the drummer actually played the bass on this song? And what if I just don't play on this song and let them play it? These are the things that start to get really exciting, because when it gets into a dangerous mode. I've been in many studios with other people's productions and things, and it always seems like everyone, I shouldn't say it always seems like everyone. It's very common to see people try to find the safest place to work, the safest way to record, the safest people to work with. And it always seems like, God, you should be doing the exact opposite, shouldn't we? At all times, like finding the most dangerous people to work with, the craziest way to do it, the time where we don't have enough time to work on this or enough money to finish this. Those are all those kind of things start shaking it up, and you start really getting creative. Playing it safe or whatever. Sort of, I don't know. It's just, I think a lot of people would probably agree. It's just a boring way to try to attack,
Yeah. And you were saying there was an extra sense of excitement on this occasion with Morning, Noon and Night, because one of the first times that you'd got a group of musicians back in the studio to work with. And is this the same bunch of people that feature on some of the other tracks, or is it? I mean, you've got Dwayne, obviously. He's different. He's the difference.
Yes, we also had Mark Watros on keys, and he's done a lot of keyboard work with the Raconteurs, my other band, the Raconteurs, and he's come on stage live with us on tour in the Raconteurs. So he's great, and he plays fiddle and piano, so he's a multi-instrumentalist. And those are the guys that when you come across that you really want to be friends with, because they can do more than one thing. That's something to really you get to play with on in the studio. Those guys are just gems and diamonds in the rough. So you got to hold on to them, as much as possible.
And you've also cleverly planned this 2-release year, so 2 albums in 1 year, but also with loads of live dates as well. So you're going to be able to explore all these songs across the world. Really, you're trying to get everywhere.
Yeah, I really am, and it's going to be nice. And we're actually going to be talking about playing places I've never played before, like Southeast Asia and Africa. I've never played Southeast Asia, Middle East, Africa. I've never played gigs in those locations on Earth. So I've really been wanting to for 20 years, and hopefully I finally can get there. It's always a matter of trying to get your equipment over there and have it pay for itself and all that. So hopefully it looks like it's going to actually happen this time. But even more importantly, it's going to the places that really love music, which obviously Britain and London are so high on that list, and with us having a new Third Man Records location in London, in Soho now, we have a nice foothold and a nice headquarters, a nice base for us to feed off of there.
Yeah. It's interesting, isn't it? I mean, with the music that you've made, and with something like Seven Nation Army, that has taken the world by storm. It's hummed and shouted on sports fields around the world. In places that you would never have played. Which is that's amazing. And so when you do go to these spots that you haven't been to before, but they'll know that song and they'll be chanting it at you.
There's an interesting thing about that. I think some person in the music business had mentioned to me that they thought it was the biggest multicultural hit of all time, because there's no words, that they're chanting a melody, and there's no need to know the language or to know the words of the song. So that's kind of gets up there with sort of like the na 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 from Hey Jude or something like that, where you don't need to know any different language. It's the language of music across the board, and that sort of becomes folk music at that point. And God, who could ask for more than that as a songwriter? That's just like, it's wild that ever happened.
Yeah, it's incredible. Shedding My Velvet is the last song on the album, and in contrast to the rest of it, you do start to take things down on this one. So, is this going to be the crossover point to the next album, which will be coming out in July?
Yes, you got it. That's like it was time to sort of have take the energy and start to try to move it over towards where we're headed next with that next record. And I'm glad you noticed that, because it was tough to decide whether that was too delicate of a song to put at the end of the record. I thought maybe that should start the next album. I don't know, but as I was recording and mixing it, I thought, oh no, it has to be the last song on the album. That's the only place it could go. And It's pretty wild. There was a funny thing that happened, and you might like this, John, is that there's at the end of the song, which is the end of the album, I say, better to illuminate than merely to shine. You say this all the time. And then the music stops, and then I sing, and you're right. And that's the last thing you hear on the album. And Ben Blackwell at Third Man Records said, do you know that's the same melody as in Stairway to Heaven when he says at the end of the song, to heaven. And I thought, well, how great, because the next album is Entering Heaven Alive. What a great transition that is. You know, one of those happy accidents. That's
brilliant. I love that. And I'm shedding my velvet. This is the real me. That's kind of a big statement in a way.
Yeah, exactly. Who is cocky enough and egotistical enough to say that and believe it? You know, this is the real me. How do we ever know, right?
Fantastic. Jack, thanks so much for giving us your time and talking us through the album. And I hope we can reprise this for album 2 later in the year and enter heaven with you. For that record, you know, it'd be great to get your thoughts on that.
I'd love to. Thanks for inviting me, and it's always a pleasure to talk to you, John. And it's just great to see, you know, that someone like you who loves music so much is, you know, still on top of his game as much as you are. So thank you for talking to me. I appreciate it.
It's very kind, Jack. Great to see you and great to speak to you. And this is Shedding My Velvet. It is Jack White on X-Posure, Radio X.
Radio X.